Yehuda, thank you so much for making time for me and for coming all this way to Los Angeles. I know that you're going to be talking to some other folks, but I'm grateful that you made time for me and for my listeners. First of all, I just wanted you to tell me about Nimrod. I've read about him. I've said his name aloud from our bima. Every week we offer prayers for some of those who are held hostage. And I know that one of the other hostages who was serving with your son is one of the names that we mentioned. But I'd love to hear about Nimrod, about your experience of him as a father. Tell us who he is.
Well, I always say Nimrod is a normal boy. We're talking about Nimrod right now, not because he's a sports star or a rock star. He's a normal, shy boy. Loves the country, loves music. We call him a peacemaker usually when my oldest son and his twin sister fights. He usually make peace between them. But further than that, a normal boy like every other boy, living his life, who had the unfortunate occasion of being kidnapped. Usually they always ask me, he was in the Nova? They ask this question. I say, no, he was a soldier. He was there trying to defend. Thing is that the aims the army gave them to defend the border was so poor. In two terms, first of all, their tank, after 6 kilometers, just stopped operating, stopped functioning. The brakes got stuck. They drove in very slow speed, something like walking speed, so it was very easy to put a bomb, to attach a bomb next to the driver location and neutralize the tank. This is one angle. The other angle, the amount of units there was so small against hundreds and thousands of terrorists, they had no chance to avoid this invasion. And that's why this catastrophe happened. But beyond that, Nimrod is a normal boy.
How long ago did Nimrod begin his service with the IDF? As my listeners know, for most Israelis, that is compulsory. It's not something that you really have a choice about. But tell me a little bit about his service. When did he start serving in the IDF? How did he end up in this unit?
Okay. He started at December 22. 4 months of basic training, 4 months of more professional training, learning the tank, learning how to operate, etc. He was only 2 months with his unit. So it was a very short time with his unit. He barely knew everybody there. So everything was very fast. Think about it. He was 2 months in the unit. Now he's nearly 10 months captive. So the rate of time is like it's nothing in the unit. Actually, I never had a chance to visit him there. My wife and my children went there one Saturday, but I was abroad in a business trip for my workplace. So for me, I didn't know any of his teammates. So we learned to recognize them, or through the families after they were kidnapped.
And I just learned right before we started recording that Omer Nutra, who is an American citizen, being held hostage, was in the tank that day with Nimrod.
Omer Nutra was the commander. He's an officer. Was the commander of the team. He is, he's American. His parents lives in Long Island. And he did, I forgot the term, it's kind of aliyah. And decided to serve in the army and go all the way to be an officer and everything. And yes, that was the team.
Take us back to October 7th. When did you first find out that your son was either engaged in the conflict itself and ultimately captured? How did that all come to your attention?
So everything started 6:30 in the morning when we heard sirens. I live in Rehovot. Rehovot is about 20 kilometers south to Tel Aviv. So there were sirens all the way from villages near Gaza to Tel Aviv and even north than that. So we heard sirens 6:30 in the morning. Okay, something happening. All right, we'll go down to the shelter. We have a shelter in our basement. No problem. Second time, okay. Third time, you start, something is happening. But we didn't think about the invasion. I was more concentrating of bringing my older son, Yotam, to his unit. He's an officer too. And his unit was in the north. So I drove him to some checkpoint location where he continued for there. And we were busy.
He had gotten a text from or a message from the army asking him to come to his unit, or he just did that on his own?
He picked up the phone and asked his commander, what's going on? He asked. They were not asking him. It's obvious. Something is happening. Looks like serious. So, first go back to the unit to see how to go on. No, he was asking, and they told him to go to some location. From there, he would be picked up all the way north to the Golan Heights. And so I was busy driving him, and we listened to the radio, sirens everywhere in the country. I didn't think about Nimrod yet. The thing is, we didn't think that something so serious is happening. It took time to understand that. And after I put him where I put him, I started driving back, and then you hear on the radio there was invasion in this village, in that village, and then I text him. It was about 9 o'clock, and I got no answer. I got back home and start looking at the news. Now the fact that I got no answer, it could be two things: something happened to him, or he's too busy fighting. And then I started going through the news, and you see that all the collapse going on in that area and the invasion and everything. And I said, I won't get any information from the official media. And there was a rumor that Hamas is releasing videos. So I went to YouTube. About 12:30, 1 o'clock, second YouTube I saw a tank going up in smoke against the border fence. Okay, what are the chances? And then I saw the camera showing one of the soldiers going out. As I said, I didn't know everybody from his team. Okay, I don't recognize him. And then the camera moves leftward, and then I see somebody leaning on something there in the front, on the machine gun. I don't know what the official name on the tank. And it looks like Nimrod. I wasn't sure. The image was a bit blurry. And then the video shifted to soldiers on the ground. And then I see him again. Froze the picture, took a screenshot, zoom it in, and it was him.
So you actually in real time saw your son and understood that he had been captured by Hamas terrorists.
Yeah, not real time. It happened about 7:30 in the morning. I saw it, let's say 5 hours later. But yeah, I got the message from Hamas, let's call it. Yeah.
And in terms of the advocacy that you've been doing as a father, along with your entire family, your spouse and Nimrod's brother and sister, tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've been doing to try to secure his release. Folks who've been following this closely will recognize some of these stories and might even recognize your face. You've been a very outspoken advocate for your son and for the other hostages. But tell our listeners a little bit about the things you've been doing over these past 294 days to try to bring your son home and all of the hostages home.
Okay, first weeks were a shock. We didn't do anything. We didn't know what to do. I'm talking to you now very fluently, like it's natural. Well, before 9th month ago, I didn't know if I can talk to media, talk to crowd, go out and shout. I was in shock. Me going to talk in the media? In English. So the first weeks were a shock. And then started the activity in the headquarters, the Mate in Tel Aviv. They kind of supported us. And it
And
started.
this is the headquarters of the hostage families.
Yeah.
So this is a group of families and their friends and advocates who have come together, the forum, to try to secure the release and make sure that people aren't forgetting these folks.
Yeah, it's more like volunteers established it and called the families to go under their umbrella. Yeah, they're doing activities, media, and marches, and every Saturday evening, what's the term in English?
Protest.
It's not a protest. They don't even call it a protest. It's called atzeret in Hebrew. I don't know the term in English, but gathering, some kind of gathering, people speaking on the stage, and stuff like that. And then started delegation. So at first I was going with my daughter, Romy, twin sister of Nimrod. Started in Italy. She met the Pope, and then you started talking to media, foreign media, and you start getting to understand what you want to say. And fighting was going on, and my oldest son was fighting in Gaza until the first deal. He was there he was a commander with his tank inside Gaza. So in this time we thought that fighting will resolve it. It was intense fighting. Fighting needs to be done in the beginning. Hamas need to be weakened. And then we started to see something is wrong. I mean, okay, it's not going nowhere. And you start thinking, you start criticizing. Okay, the government, they talk about fighting, they talk about everybody is united, but they're doing something else. They're saying that the first important thing is to release the hostages, but they're doing something else. And you start thinking and you say, okay, you got to go out in the streets. So there was a shift around March. It's not just gathering and talking and saying, do everything to release my son, do everything to release. It's not, we finished asking or begging. We started demanding. And we started pointing out, it's not just we demand the deal. It's pointing, you are responsible. You, Benjamin Netanyahu, you're responsible for the event of the 7th of October. You are responsible to release them. Put everything aside. You can continue the war later, but first of all, release everybody. So we went out of the streets. Of course, we continued with delegation. By the way, I went with my oldest son to London. I stole it from them. You see, this is a picture of my son, but you see the British flag here. So we went all over the world. This is my third time in the US, by the way. Been to Seattle, been to New York. Of course, this delegation started with Washington, here in Los Angeles, will continue in Boston. So in parallel, we are shouting abroad and shouting in Israel. We're protesting in Israel. We are doing everything, not just to say we want a deal. We're saying that Netanyahu is responsible for that. He got to go for a deal. And abroad, what's the main purpose of this delegation is to say to the U.S. media, to the U.S. Politics, congressmen, senators, to Jewish communication, you got to see the difference between the Israeli nation and the Israeli government. I mean, you can and you must criticize our government, our horrible government, as I call it, because they are the problem. They are concerned with their own survival, the government in whole and Netanyahu in particular. And you got to support the Israeli nation. But don't be afraid to criticize Netanyahu because he's the problem. Don't split between the two things. The country, the population, the citizens, and the government. Criticizing the government is not criticizing Israel. It's not an anti-Semitic act. And supporting Israel, it's not supporting the government. You got to push the government for a deal for the good of Israel. Now, why for the good of Israel? You can say, okay, I'm only interested in my son coming home. It's like a personal interest. No, ceasefire is not only for bringing all the hostages back home. Ceasefire is for the good of the country. How long can a small country like Israel, surrounded by enemies, can continue to fight? So war must end. End of the war will end the suffrage of the people in Israel. Soldiers can go back home to the families. Reserve soldiers can go back home to the families. People in the north can go back to their homes. And next step, as we know, the normalization with Saudi Arabia. It's a very important point. This is the step for a regional coalition with the support of the United States that will block Iran, that will block all the terrorist organizations, that will bring peace in the region, that will bring the point where Israel can negotiate with Palestine on a Palestine country in both regions, Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and only an act that will fit the interests of both sides will end this thing.
I want to ask you, you mentioned Romi,
Yeah.
Nimrod's younger sister.
Nimrod, twin sister.
Twin sister, sorry. Which one's older?
She's 2 minutes older than him.
2 minutes
okay?
older. Okay. Nimrod's slightly older sister.
Yeah.
And you mentioned an audience that you had with the Pope.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how she's managing all of this. I'm sure as a father, I'm trying to imagine all the different obligations we have, our obligations to our children and a spouse, and you think about even taking care of yourself. You mentioned earlier before we started recording, the travel and what it does to you. I can only imagine as a father what you're going through. Can't imagine what you're going through. But maybe you could help us understand, because again, part of what I want our listeners to really know as best as they can is a little bit more about Nimrod and his story and you and how this incredibly difficult situation, again, unimaginable, how it's affecting others in the family. So tell us a little bit about Romi and how she's responding.
And I'll talk about myself. So when things happened, she just finished a year of civil service, okay? Before going to the army. She had to be drafted in November, a month after the event. So she delayed her drafting in 3 months. She went in February. Till that, she was going with me to delegation. She was very active in the Mate, the headquarters in Tel Aviv. This is in Israel, and abroad she went with me. It started with the trip to Rome to meet the Pope. It was very disappointing because it was a 20 minutes meeting. Only part of the families talked. Romi didn't have a chance to talk. It was very disappointing. And then he was rushing to meet the mothers of Palestinian prisoners. So it made me mad, because it's like comparing between families of hostages, innocent people that were taken hostage, and you don't have any information about them, comparing to families of prisoners who were convicted for felonies like murder and stuff like this, who have rights, by the way. They have rights for lawyers, for family visit and everything, their condition. So it was very frustrating. Actually, this is the first time I went to a press party, press conference, and I said that in those words. We are very disappointed. So it started with this. We've been there. We've been in Toronto and Ottawa, in Canada, actually, all the way up to meeting the Prime Minister, not talking with him, but just meeting him. We went to Seattle, and this was in that period. It was kind of change of shift, because the same week she drafted to the army, and my older son Yotam was released from the army. So he took over, and from there we went other places, of course here. This is regarding Romi. Was her way to fight. Now she's in the army, so she's less in this activity. As for me, how do I cope? I'm sitting here sometimes smiling like everything is okay. This is my way to cope. The activity in Israel, in marches and demonstrations, meeting officials, actually shouting at them, going to delegation, meeting with official abroad and shouting our condition. I don't know how to say it. And again, with this message that it's not only pressure Qatar to pressure Hamas and all this stuff, pressure our government for a deal too. It doesn't sound like I'm a traitor. Okay, I'm an Israeli patriotic. I sent all my son to the army. I pay taxes. I live in Israel. The problem is my government. My government is the traitor. The government is traiting Israel. We can see it now. After 9.5 months of war, it's not working for Israel. So this is my way to cope, to shout, to go on and speak, media, delegation, whatever.
Well, I'm grateful to you for spending some of that time the way that you are advocating for your son and coping and also advocating for Israel. Thank you for spending some of that time with me.
Thank you.
And for sharing your voice with our listeners. And I do find it so painful and just upside down that even if someone disagrees with you terribly and they say, Yehuda, with all due respect, we don't think this is the right strategy and we think you're wrong about this and we think you're wrong about that. Okay, fine, we can argue about that. But the idea that someone would call you a traitor is so deeply offensive to me and so painful to imagine. And again, how dare someone who hasn't sent their own children to the army? How dare someone who hasn't experienced what you've experienced? How dare someone say such a thing? So I'm so sorry that you have experienced that. I've been reading that from afar because I do follow the Israeli news both in English and in Hebrew as best I can. And I visited multiple times. I've been to Israel 4 times since October 7th. And one of the things I noticed, my first visit was at the end of October. And I came to Hostage Square didn't exist yet. Most of the families that had tents were right in Sarona, right across from the military headquarters. And that was where everybody was. And then when I came back a month and a half later with a delegation of rabbis, there was already in front of the museum,
square,
which is now called Kikar HaChatufim, Hostage Square. And then in my third visit, which was in February, I brought a group of congregants. And now things have been developed even more. And it was so tragic to see, right? Because to know that you have to have that presence and that now there are thousands and thousands of people who come every day. And every Saturday night, there continue to be gatherings. Just, you can't believe it's still happening. And of course it is. And that's, for me, I don't have a child in captivity. The closest I have is a friend of ours when we lived in Jerusalem, Rachel and John, so Hirsch's parents. Yeah. And we became friends because I lived in Baca, and that's where John and Rachel live. And so we spent time together as a family. And I knew Hirsch when he was a 12-year-old boy. So I can only imagine. But it was interesting to see the way that has developed over the months. What do you see as you, obviously, here you are still advocating, still speaking out, still trying to raise awareness, still trying to influence the American Jewish community, your community at home. For our listeners who want to be helpful, what are some things that we can be doing to help to bring Nimrod home and to bring all of the hostages home, we know that there are some hostages who have died in captivity, and we want their bodies to come home so they can be properly buried. What can we do to help you?
The only thing, as I said before, talking about Jewish communities abroad, they have to stop being afraid criticizing our government. And again, criticizing our government is not going against Israel. Israel is a country, people live there, they will live there forever. Governments change. This government is a horrible government. We won't go into political views, but concerning the events of the 7th of October, the government is doing nothing to resolve the hostages crisis. Keep on fighting. You can say it in the moderate way, but we know big parts of this government, what they want to use this event to reconquer the Gaza Strip and to bring back the settlement. They want to keep having the problem, the Israeli-Arab or Israeli-Palestinian problem, go on forever. They're not for resolution. They are saying this is the opportunity, and I even heard one of the politicians said, putting aside the 1,200 killed and 250 then kidnapped, this is a very happy month. Now we have the chance to go and re-establish the settlement in Gaza. That was the word. I was shocked too, and it was back in October, November that I heard this thing. So yeah, for them it's a chance. And then you can look at it the other way. Okay, who killed? Most of the villages, most of the kibbutzim surrounding Gaza, they are not religious. And they are not on the side of the coalition, politically wise. And the people that went to the Nova on Shabbat, okay, they're not religious. They're not our people. Okay, forget about the soldiers. There are a few soldiers, okay. So it's like, okay, it's not our, it's a tragedy, but it's not really our tragedy. So we've got to make the best of it. And what do we want? Back to Gaza, back to the settlement.
So our opportunity and our job is to speak out, both in terms of helping people to remember that there are captives that need to come home, but you're also encouraging us, both as American Jews and others who are listening who care about this issue, to speak out against the Netanyahu government and to try to bring about change there. One of the things I saw on my last trip, Yehuda, I was there this summer. I actually just got back from Israel about 2 weeks ago, and on 3 of the Saturday nights when I was there, I went to Kikar Chatufim, then I went to Kaplan, and then the
Begin.
third stop is Begin, and there's a whole, in Hebrew, a sivuv, that you do, kind of a circuit that you do. And again, it was so painful to think that this is part of normal life. And I know for so many families leading up to October 7th, when they were protesting the judicial reform, and with deep concern about Israeli democracy, and they said this is what Saturday nights are for us, is we go to Kaplan and we protest. And so it's just so hard to imagine the exhaustion that people must be feeling. And I talked to so many of my Israeli friends when I was there on my most recent trip about that. You must just be so tired, you must be so exhausted. And then you think about what you're going through, and now times that by a trillion, because you've got the exhaustion of everyday ordinary Israeli patriots who care about their country and want a better future for their children, like you do for your 3 children. And then you compound that by the fact that you have a son in captivity. I wanted to end, Yehuda, with something that brings you hope when you think about giving up, when you think of despair, when you think of how am I going to do one more day of this. Obviously, as a father, you can't do that. You can't do that. But I'm sure there are moments where I could imagine that there would be moments where you think, I can't do this for one more second, but there's something that keeps you going. Obviously, your son and your love for him. Is there something else that really gives you hope and makes you, when you get up in the morning, feel like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to raise my voice again. I'm going to try to make a difference. I'm going to keep going. What is that thing?
So first of all, I'll never give up. No chance. And as I said before, the only thing that holds me is this activity. And I'll do anything. And as you know, straight from the airport, putting my suitcase in the hotel and straight here. I don't care. And if there is another activity from here, I'll go straight away. This is what's holding me, and this is the only hope that gives me. This is the only thing that gives me hope, because only fighting will end it. When there were the hostages, the 2 hostages actually, they are dead. Goldin and Shaul, okay, happened 10 years ago, And they told the family, the government told the families, be quiet with it. Because if you shout out, it will increase the price. The Hamas will, increase the price for their release, even though they are bodies, not alive. So they were quiet for 3 years. Nothing happened. Now it's 10 years. They are still waiting for their sons to be returned for a proper burial. So quiet won't help us. The government wants us to be quiet. Okay, we're taking care of it. We have these discussions, and we have a very smart prime minister who knows how to deal. Don't shout. But we know the results. Ron Arad. It was the same thing. Don't do anything. They told the family, don't do anything. Now, there's nothing to be returned. So the only way I will get my son back. All the rest of the families will get the loved ones back. Their fathers, mothers, grandfathers, children, is by fighting. No other choice. That's what we're going to keep on doing. And you mentioned the demonstration, Kaplan, Begin, the square. We are Begin group. We are demonstrating every day. It's a small demonstration usually, it weekdays. And we're doing the big demonstration on Saturday night. And of course there is, as you said, the round of demonstration. People for Kaplan comes to Begin, and part of the people from the Kikar comes to Begin. And it's from week to week, there are more people. They're counting more than 150,000 people coming there on Saturday night. So people are helping us. Another thing, you talk about demonstration for the judicial reform or revolution. I was there before the 7th of October. I was demonstrating when all this reform started, revolution actually, because I was worried. I knew in some way I will pay for those acts they're doing. I thought it would be more economic crisis. I didn't think it will come so personally and so deep to my family. So this is a situation where we are now, and we want to resolve it. And the first step is the hostage deal with ceasefire. This will be the first step for healing.
Yehuda, I want to thank you so much for coming to be with me straight from the airport. And I want you to know that our congregation, as I said, each week we mention 10 names of hostages. And we thought when we went through the whole list of names, we thought, oh my goodness, I can't believe we're starting over again. And we were back, and then a third time, and now we're in the fourth pass. And it's just so incredibly painful. And I just want you to know that you're not alone in thinking about Nimrod. You're not alone in thinking about a better future for Israel and for the world. And I'm just grateful to you for continuing to raise your voice and tell Nimrod's story, for raising children who are sacrificing so much on behalf of Israel, on behalf of the Jewish people. And we're here to help in any way we can. I'm grateful to you, Yehuda.
Thank you.